All right, I wanted to talk about the situation a few days ago, so I am a little late to this, where about 24 hours after the tragic midair collision that took place last week, just 24 hours, the Trump administration emailed a bunch of air traffic controllers around the nation to quit your jobs. So, we're going to read an article here from the Daily Beast. And after we read this article, we are going to talk to MAGA's favorite AI, ChatGPT, to just kind of prompt them on what privatizing the FAA would look like. Because as we read this article, it kind of seems like that's where the Trump administration wants to go with it. So, without further ado, we have Trump admin emails air traffic controllers, quit your jobs. And again, this is from the Daily Beast. So, air traffic controllers were emailed by the Trump administration urging them to quit their jobs and take mass buyouts just 24 hours after the DC plane crash. They were among hundreds of thousands of federal workers sent the email at 8:30 p.m. Thursday to push extraordinary offer by Trump aides to get civil servants to quit en masse. The email dropped almost exactly 24 hours after an Army helicopter crashed into an American Airlines jet as it came into land at Reagan National Airport, killing 67 people. Just one air traffic controller was doing the work of two controllers at the same time. Early reports have suggested, and looks like this may be some of the wreckage here. Anyways, we encourage you to find a job in the private sector as soon as you would like to do so, stated the email sent by the Office of Personnel Management, the New York Times reported. The way to greater American prosperity is encouraging people to move from lower productivity jobs in the public sector to higher productivity jobs in the private sector. This message was formatted as a frequently asked questions. It suggested by taking the buyout, workers could immediately get second jobs or vacation at their dream destination while still being on the government payroll. That advice is contradictory to years old regulations that prohibited federal employees from picking up second sources of income. I'm sure that's, conflict of interest type things that, federal employees can't, but all the politicians can take as many conflict of interest as they want. So, the late Thursday night email follows up on an earlier one which offered federal workers other incentives to abandon their job security, such as 8 months of pay if they obliged by February 6th. On Friday, speaking about his plan for federal workers during a press conference, Trump stated, "It's our dream to have everyone almost working in the private sector, not the public sector." Following Wednesday's plane crash, Trump shifted the blame for the tragedy to a number of figures, including previous administrations, claiming, "I put safety first, Obama and Biden, and Democrats put policy first." Jesus Christ. In an apparent attempt to ignite the culture wars and further discredit the FAA, Trump falsely claimed that the agency's website lists individuals with hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism as qualified applicants for the air controller position. That is false. 100%, as it was proven. Like I said in another video, these are not air traffic controllers. These are, janitors, secretaries, security, just general administrative staff. These aren't the fucking air traffic controllers. So just stop with this shit. It's childish. The president of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, Nick Daniels, told the Times that it is not yet clear how the resignation program would come into effect. Daniels added that union workers are concerned about the consequences of losing experienced aviation safety personnel during a universally recognized air traffic controller staffing shortage. Yeah, and as you should know, we're already short thousands of air traffic controller jobs. And he just sent an email saying, "Hey, you should fucking resign and go to the private sector." Like, what the fuck are we doing? Crazy. So, yeah, the reason why I want to get to ChatGPT here in a second is from my take, it sounds like they want to privatize as much as they can. And I think that's a pretty reasonable take just based on their general rhetoric and the rhetoric we just read in this article. So, and overall, this is just another situation where they're cracking down on the federal government and all this bureaucracy and just gutting the administrative state of the US, just like it outlined in Project 2025 that Trump had no idea what that was, or, tried to distance himself from it. Uh, and this pairs with what we talked about in his first week of office, how wants to reclassify all these federal jobs, all these civil servant jobs, so that they can be easily fireable, replaceable. And guess what is considered a civil servant, a federal civil servant job? Air traffic controllers fall into that. So when he says, when he's bolstering about how we just made it easier to fire all these bureaucrats who are clogging up the system and making your life bad, nonsense. It's all cover. It's all bullshit. It's just, yeah. I mean, the Republicans are always fucking masters at messaging, and that's why we're in the situation we're in right now. So let's talk about the implications and benefits, cons of privatizing the FAA per ChatGPT. Okay, so I just gave ChatGPT a very simple prompt. What would happen if we privatize the FAA? No bias or anything inserted, so I just wanted to see because I was curious. And it was kind of this is an interesting read. So privatizing the Federal Aviation Administration would fundamentally change how air traffic control, aviation safety, and regulation operate in the US. The outcomes would depend on how privatization is structured, but there are several potential benefits and risks. So let's start with the benefits. More efficient air traffic control. A private entity could modernize ATC more quickly, investing in new technologies without being tied to congressional budget cycles. Some countries like Canada have nonprofit self-funded ATC systems that are more cost-effective and responsive. Less bureaucracy and political interference. The FAA is heavily influenced by Congress, which can delay important upgrades due to funding battles. Ain't that true? A privatized FAA could streamline decision-making and cut red tape. More competitive service and innovation. Private entities would have incentives to adopt new navigation and tracking systems, etc. Or, for example, satellite-based GPS instead of outdated radar could lead to reduced delays and improved air travel experiences. Cost savings for taxpayers. The FAA's operations, including air traffic control, are currently funded by taxpayers and airline fees. Privatization. This could shift the financial burden to airline and passengers, reducing reliance on federal funds. Well, I mean, that doesn't sound too bad. I don't fly a lot. Normally, people who fly a lot are kind of rich and could probably, it's like a silent tax on rich. I'm sure there's special circumstances where someone who may not be as well off has to travel frequency, and this could, or travel frequently, and this could hurt them. But overall, increasing plane tickets and reducing federal spending there, I'm for that. But the problem is the federal spending, any money we save is under at least this administration. You're not going to see the benefits of it in your taxes or, any government programs. But let's talk about the risk and the challenges. Higher costs for airline passengers. Privatization could lead to new fees on airlines, which might be passed on to consumers through higher ticket prices. I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of fine with that. Airlines may have more control over ATC decisions, prioritizing profitability over public access. That could be concerning. Safety and regulatory oversight concerns. The FAA currently oversees aircraft certification, pilot licensing, and airline compliance. If privatized, there's a risk that cost-cutting measures could compromise safety standards. A private entity may self-regulate with less transparency than a government agency. That to me is terrifying and probably one of the biggest red flags for me that I would be concerned about. Equity and accessibility issues. Small airports and rural areas could be deprioritized in favor of busier, more profitable routes. Airlines and major hubs could exert more control over aviation policy, potentially harming competition. Union and workforce impact. FAA employees, particularly air traffic controllers, are unionized and could face job security concerns under a private system. So yeah, that would suck. going from being in a nice union and then not having a union and can be essentially just thrown to the side whenever. Labor disputes or restructuring could dispute aviation operations, cybersecurity, and national security risk. Well, circling back to the labor disputes, so that sounds like just like the other side of the coins. Instead of budget disputes in Congress, you would have stuff like that in a more private environment, from my understanding. So, cybersecurity and national security risk. The FAA also plays a role in national security, coordinating with the military on airspace management. A privatized system could face cyber threats or be more vulnerable to foreign influence. Let's be real, private versus public. I think both are equally on the table for cyber attacks. That's my opinion. Lessons from other countries. Canada, NAV Canada, a nonprofit private corporation that runs ATC without taxpayer funding, has successfully modernized ATC, reducing delays and costs. However, airline fees have increased to cover the costs. UK National Air Traffic Services, NATS, a public private partnership with the government holding a stake, initially struggled with funding issues but improved after restructuring. Europe, many European countries have semi-privatized ATC, but they face congestion issues due to fragmented control. I would also be concerned about that here. Conclusion, should the U.S. privatize the FAA? A hybrid model like NAV Canada could work if proper safeguards are in place. Privatizing air traffic control might improve efficiency, but completely privatizing the FAA's regulatory role could risk safety. The key challenge would be balancing cost, safety, and accessibility, ensuring that private interests do not compromise public safety or increase travel costs unfairly. So, at a glance, it seems like not cutting, but, privatizing the FAA could bring a lot of benefits, but it has to be done right, it sounds like. And let's be honest, like this administration just does not know how to play a long-term game or the right game when it comes to cutting and just fucking blindly doing stuff. Like you're sending an email to air traffic controllers when we already have a shortage telling them to quit. And it's not like we have some bill or some grand plan rolled up to kind of transition people from, or just transition our airports from from a public to a private system. Like, it's the same deal with fucking tariffs. You can't just tariff every fucking good we import when we don't produce all those goods. If you want to set up a long-term plan to get the manufacturing so we can get those goods and then tariffs will be in effect after that, fine. Same with, kind of if you want to go this privatizing the FAA route, it needs to be a clean transition. And my overall concern is just the lack of regulations and transparency that would come with privatizing the FAA. And even with I feel like if it's not broke, don't fix it, because despite all the recent tragedies and kind of all the media attention we're getting on airline disasters right now, you can look up the statistics, but there's been like 34 commercial aircraft accidents since the year of 2000, and we have like over 45,000 flights a day with millions of Americans traveling, and we've had like 34 incidents since 25 years ago. So it's like it's not broken, so I don't think we need to kill it. Maybe fix it, that's another discussion, because they are grossly understaffed and it sounds like using a lot of outdated systems. I don't see how we can't just push to actually funding to get that staffing and upgrade those systems. But I just worry about the transition, and like we're talking about lots of lives that could be lost if something goes wrong during this, if that makes sense. So I'm interested to see what you guys think. Like, I'm really caught up on lack of regulations and transparency, and along with fragmented control, because you have all these companies controlling different air traffic control towers and different regulations, and it just seems like a nightmare waiting to happen, because something that this administration is proud of and runs on is gutting regulations, as we talked about in other videos, for everything. Trump is either Trump or Elon, maybe both, basically said it themselves. There should be no regulations. And so if you want to privatize a lot of the FAA's functionality, you have to have safeguards and regulations to do it. And they're just they would just fucking cut it and say good luck Wild West for fucking 5 years until we figure it out. Like, yeah, it is an interesting conversation, and it is something I could almost support if it was done right and done over a long-term transition. But I'm curious to see what you guys think in the comments down below. And until next time, I will see you. If you made it to this point in the video, I just want to give a special thank you. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button down below. And if you really enjoyed it, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button while you're down there. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I will try to reply to any and all comments that I can. Until next time, watch that video on screen.